Welcome back. Last time we went over some effective strategies for writing attention grabbers at the beginning of your introduction paragraph. We talked about 5 of them, but in reality, the ways you could engage your reader are endless. However, while the possibilities are endless, there are a few strategies that your English teacher and your readers might find a little cliché. New vocabulary word. Cliché. Something that has been so overused that it is perceived as stereotypical and unoriginal. The goal of a hook at the beginning of your introduction paragraph is to engage your reader. If the first thing your reader thinks is, "Oh, you're doing that thing. Yeah, I've seen that before," they're not going to be as engaged as you would like. So today we're going to explore some of these cliché intro starters. But before we get into this, I want to start with a disclaimer. The cliché strategies we're about to discuss are not necessarily bad. In fact, you might come up with a way to use them that comes across as unique and creative and engaging, and that's awesome. And the whole reason they're clichés, the reason they get overused, is that they work. So I'm telling you that you should avoid these strategies because they're cliché, but in a pinch, they work just fine. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get down to business. Let's say you're working on an essay about the effects of cell phones on interpersonal communications, and your thesis statement is something like this. Despite the constant connectedness we enjoy through our cell phones, these digital connections actually prevent us from making real connections with other human beings. We need a great way to start off this introduction paragraph. Let's take a look at some of the attention-grabbing hooks that might come across as cliché. Cliché number 1, the rhetorical question. The truly cliché way to start an essay is to just ask the question that your writing prompt asked you and then start answering it. Do cell phones have any negative effects on interpersonal communications? I think they do. You could scratch this whole start with a question strategy and shoot for something a little more original. But at the very least, if you're going to start with a question, at least make sure the question isn't just restating the original writing prompt. Make it a question that will actually engage your reader on an emotional level. Have you ever gotten all dressed up for a night out at a romantic restaurant, only to end up frustrated when your date spent the entire evening checking a cell phone and responding to text messages? That's a little better. See, even this cliché strategy could still be used effectively. Cliché number 2, the Webster. We've all seen this one before. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines communication as the act or process of using words, sounds, signs, or behaviors to express or exchange information or to express your ideas, thoughts, feelings, etc. to someone else. Really? Think about this. How many of you sit and read dictionary entries because you find them interesting and engaging? Probably not, right? Again, there might be a time when including a definition in your introduction might be necessary. It could be an important part of some background information. But I would suggest having a different attention grabber before the definition, because a dictionary definition just isn't going to hook your reader. Cliché number 3, the onomatopoeia. This one is a classic, especially for middle school writers. Bzz, bzz. Cell phones can draw us away from the real world in favor of a digital world. Oh, yes. You're doing that thing where you start your essay with an attention-grabbing sound effect. Yep, seen it. An onomatopoeia, that is such a fun word to say. Onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia like this can still be part of an effective introduction, but try to embed it into another strategy so it's a little less obvious. We've probably all been there a few times before. You're in the middle of a face-to-face conversation with someone you care about. She's in the middle of a sentence when you suddenly hear a familiar sound. Bzz, bzz. And just like that, your digital connection interrupts a real human connection. Cliché number 4, the dawn of time. Human beings have been communicating with words for thousands of years. I actually see this one quite often. Since the dawn of time, people have been telling stories, and one of those stories is Romeo and Juliet. Mankind has been writing poetry since the dawn of time, but one of the best poets ever was Emily Dickinson. People have been cruel to each other since the dawn of time, and racism is one of the most common forms of cruelty. I don't know why, but there's something about starting with a big, grand, usually super vague statement like this that seems to be a difficult temptation to overcome. But try to overcome it, because when you start with a statement this grandiose, everything that comes after it inevitably feels like an anticlimactic letdown. Cliché number 5, the random quote. To be or not to be, that is the question. We also have a lot of questions today, and one of them is whether cell phones and texting have negative effects on interpersonal communication. In reality, starting with a quote can be a great way to grab your reader's attention, but quite often I see students start an essay with a quote that doesn't really connect to anything. It doesn't grab my attention, it doesn't draw me into their topic. On the other hand, look at this one. According to the Pew Research Center, texting is the dominant daily mode of communication between teens and all those with whom they communicate. That quote could be a great way to start this particular essay. It's an intriguing fact, and it's authoritative because the source is generally well respected. The problem is when you start with a random quote that doesn't add anything of value to what you're saying. So, for attention-grabbing introductions, use quotes sparingly and only if they clearly and quickly present the issue you're going to be focusing on in your essay. Remember that none of these cliché strategies are wrong per se. They're just overused. Frankly, your mama jokes are a bit cliché, but admit it, they're still kind of funny. As is always the case with writing, if you can improve it, you should. So, don't settle for a cliché introduction if you can come up with something more original. It's your turn. Let's go to work.